Joined now by former Vancouver Canuck TSN hockey analyst, the one and only Mr. Frank Corrado. How you doing, Frank?
Good. How you guys doing?
Fantastic, sir. Pius Suter, full scouting report. What do you know about him? What do you think of the signing?
Well, so we were prepared on free agent frenzy for him to sign somewhere, and we were doing the kind of comparables, and we thought he would get $2 million just based on his productivity the last couple of years, and so for the Canucks to get him on a 2-year deal at $1.6 million, it's a good deal for the team. I think it's a good deal for the player as well because he gets that extra year, so he gets a little more security there. Listen, he's a guy, like, he's in that 10 to 15 goal range. The assists can kind of vary, I guess, from 10 to 20, whatever you want to call it, but pretty smooth kind of player, like decent playmaker, decent shot. I saw some stuff going around about him, about his defensive numbers being very good. I think that's a little skewed. Like, I don't think he's coming in, he's not going to be like a defensive stalwart of a third line center. I think you're going to see times there where you're like, he's going to miss some coverage and he might miss his guy like every player does. But, having the chance to see him quite a bit here, playing against the Leafs, whether it's in person or, on a television set, like he's just one of those guys. He's fairly consistent. He can make plays with the puck, which I think a lot of people will come to appreciate. But the narrative that he's this excellent defensive guy is maybe a little overstated. I think he will be fine, put in the right situation. So ultimately, it looks like it's a good third line center for a team that needed one at a decent cap hit as well.
Well, and he'll have opportunity here too, Frank. As you know, the Canucks are not particularly deep at center ice, and they're not particularly deep at center ice with guys that they want in defensive situations. So you tell me, do you think he's got more offensive upside? And do you think he can, if not be a shutdown or shadow centerman, be the Vancouver Canucks' best option there?
I would say he's got more offensive upside than he has defensive upside from watching him play. I still think that, if you're trying to match center icemen, you're still going to go best on best. I think so anyways. There's a reason why guys are the best at what they do. Like, Elias Pettersson is the best centerman on the team. And if McDavid and the Oilers are rolling into town, I'm still going with top dog versus top dog. I think there are situations around the league where you can look around and say, okay, this guy has made a career out of being, an excellent defensive centerman, and we can match that up. Like, a Ryan O'Reilly is a great example of that, right? Like, there's a guy who's not exactly your first line guy anymore, might not be your second line guy depending on the team he's on, but you're like, he is such a good matchup guy. He's so smart, he's so savvy, he's so trustworthy away from the puck that now that's going to free up my top line guy. Like, I don't see Suter being that guy. I still think Vancouver's in a situation where you're going to go head to head, top dog versus top dog, and that's fine. Like, ultimately, if your third line center is giving you, at $1.6 million, if he's giving you production value of a guy that makes, $3 million and he's getting, 35 points, I think that's a huge win for the Canucks. So I think the potential for that is certainly there this year. And it ultimately will come down to, the team game. I think that's been talked about a lot in Vancouver. Like, how is Rick Tocchet going to implement this defensive structure within the team, but also not stifle things offensively and allow the team to still have that creativity. He's going to be a part of that, right? Because I think there is, there's more than 20 points there for him to be had. I think there's a higher skill level there where he could get to 35, 40 points. As he just had his third year in the league. So if anything, he should be just coming into his own even more now.
Is there a world in which these wingers that the Vancouver Canucks have, they've got some diminutive wingers for Pius Suter, do you think Rick Tocchet, based on what you know about him, would put a Niels Höglander or a Connor Garland alongside Suter, or is that just unfathomable? Do you think from what you know of Tocchet?
I don't think it's unfathomable. I don't like. Tocchet's a smart guy. I also think he's the kind of guy who's going to give players an opportunity and say, show me what you can do, right? And so, like, that, obviously there's a certain runway that comes with that as a player. And I think as a coach, you want to give players that opportunity. But I don't think he's closed-minded. Like there's some coaches, around the league that, you maybe you have an idea and you bring it to them, and it's just like that's not happening. Like I think Tocchet's one of those guys just because he's, he's so good at communicating with the players. He can connect to you on a personal level. Like I find he's one of those guys that he'll hear you out and he'll say, okay, like, go show me and let's go do it. Like, I'm not opposed to it, right? Because ultimately, if you're going to get good results from it, why would you just shut it down to begin with? So the thing with Höglander that'll be interesting is, like, he's got to be the hardest working guy on the ice. Like, I don't think his game works unless he is Energizer Bunny, skating as fast as he possibly can, but with a little more of a brain. Like, I think he's going to have to bring that to the table and show that, like, he's learned the league a little bit and he's a little more intelligent. I think, was it Bruce Boudreau that made comments about Höglander, just saying, like, he needs to be a little smarter? I don't think he's wrong. I think Höglander has a ton of skill. He's got a lot of tools, but he's going to need to be a smarter player. And for Garland, like, if he's playing with Pius Suter, I think there's a guy that maybe, like, Pius Suter can make plays for you. Like, I think you can find ways, like, now you're the smaller guy, like, find those pockets of the ice that you can sneak around and, work off of checks. Like, I think Suter's a guy who can make plays in smaller spaces in the offensive zone, and you can get some good looks that way. So, I don't think the size has much to do with it as much as, can they kind of put it together and show that they can do it, basically.
Training camp looks interesting. There's on the wings in particular. Like, there are battles, and those wingers should be showing up at training camp knowing there are battles. I can imagine that there are going to be some noisy practices and noisy training sessions for training camp.
And it's probably not the worst thing for this team, like, just because of where they are, right? Like, we know they're not gonna strip it down and start from scratch. It's a team that, basically, they need to make the playoffs. At some point here, they need to show that this was the right course of action, and they're going to have to make the playoffs. And so you need something within the room, on the bench, whatever it is, that just pushes your team over the edge a little bit more. And that competitive spirit can certainly help. When it's done the right way, I think it's a great way for guys to push each other. Having the jobs, like, at stake in training camp it adds something for sure. It can be stressful as a player. Like, it just can be, right? Like, because when you're like, okay, for whatever reason, I didn't have a great year last year. My contract, I make a little too much money for whatever my output is. All those kinds of things, and there's younger players coming up through the pipeline, and you're like, okay, there's no, like, August 15th, I'm skipping a day of training and going to play golf, and I'll get back to it tomorrow. It's like, everyone kind of knows and everyone understands. And we're at the time of the summer right now where if you're a player, like, you kind of starting to get locked in on things. You're on the ice, for a summer skate, and it's, okay, I'm going to work on my point shot with this situation now. Like, you're just dialing into a few more
You're pretty
things.
intense at this point, you think?
You're starting to get dialed in. You're like, you don't want to be peaking right now, right? But you're starting to get to that point where you're like, okay, I want to give myself here at least 4 weeks of like practicing with a purpose. It's not just going onto the ice every day now and just, doing the edge work and doing the pylons. It's like the mindless stuff is kind of finished now. And you're like, okay, I'll give you an example for me as a defenseman. Like, if I was going back for pucks this time of year, I want to make sure that, okay, I got my one shoulder check, my other shoulder check, and, like, I feel comfortable doing that and wheeling the net. Like, it's just, you're turning your brain on a little bit more now, because think about it, like, for all these guys, it's been since April, the brain's been turned off. Now things are starting to percolate. So I think that, like, that spills into a training camp where there's jobs up for grabs and roles and positions on the team. It should be one of those training camps where guys come in shape, which is automatic. You never really have to worry about that. But playing with a purpose right from the get-go would be the biggest thing.
Frankie, what must Philip Hronek be thinking right now? Detroit trades him last year at the deadline, a surprise move for just about everyone. Kevin Allen, the Hall of Fame writer in Detroit, told us this week that there were attitudinal issues with Hronek after Moritz Seider came in and took a lot of the opportunity and minutes there on the right side of defense. And then Steve Yzerman has a summer where he goes out and signs right shot Justin Holl, signs Shane Gostisbehere, who can play the right side, and then yesterday trades for Jeff Petrie, another right-handed defenseman. So it's not like Detroit was without need on the right side of the defense. They just chose people other than Philip Hronek.
Yeah. And
chip on his shoulder stuff. And frankly, I think that's a good thing for the Canucks.
Yeah, it can be. Listen, it's a long journey being a hockey player, and you can learn a lot of lessons along the way. Or you cannot learn those lessons, stay stuck in your ways, and see what happens if you want to go that route. I would say it's pretty easy to fill in the blanks here and read between the lines as to what the mindset was coming from Detroit. And there's nothing wrong with, as a player looking back at situations throughout your career and saying, okay, didn't love the way I handled that. I have a fresh new opportunity here that I want to take full advantage of. How can I learn from the last situation I was in? So I think that's a great opportunity or a great chance for him to take advantage of that. As far as his game goes, he's going to be put in a great spot here. He's going to be playing with a lot of good players. He's going to be playing, he's going to get a lot of ice time. He doesn't have Moritz Seider, who's coming in as a highly touted rookie who's taken all his ice time away, because essentially that is what happened in Detroit. Philip Hronek had been playing well. He had earned opportunities on the power play, whatever the case may be. But Moritz Seider, that guy's the future of that blue line. He's unbelievable. He is a stud defenseman. So I don't fault Detroit for a second for giving Seider all those opportunities and that ice time. It's the right thing to do. But now it'll be up to Hronek to kind of learn from that and still have that confidence in himself. You want to be confident that you you get put out in any situation and you can make something happen and you can excel. But if things happen during the season, if you get hurt and you come back and someone else is playing that spot, okay, you're going to have to be patient. You're going to have to be a good teammate. And you're going to have to wait your turn to get back to it. And I think those are the lessons that, from a player in their early 20s, as you get into your mid and late 20s, you start to put things into perspective a little more. You start to understand that because we get so tunnel vision during the season, right? There's more around you than just what you're seeing in the moment. But it's one of those things that you almost have to experience it, because I can't tell you how many times it was an agent or an older player kind of tells you these things, but unless you really experience it, it's hard to grasp and understand. So for him, it's a great learning lesson for him. I'm sure he wants to be like every other player, wants to be respected, wants to be known as a guy that teams players all that kind of stuff. So listen, it's a blank slate here in Vancouver, and it's a very good opportunity for him to show that he's learned.
Yeah, and of course, because Quinn Hughes is running the power play, that's where the bulk of offensive opportunity will be for Blue.
It should be reminded that Hronek's in a contract year, and next year will cost more than Hull and Petrie combined, and he's already only $1 million shy of those two combined. So I think Detroit made the estimation, we're going to go with two inferior guys, but at least we'll have depth on the right side as opposed to one guy who might be better.
Hey, and I think contract year works out for the Canucks here too.
That part,
he's playing for that rich increase that he's looking for, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Although our old friend Ray Ferraro says
he never liked contract years.
He never relished this. Frankie, Elias Pettersson has set himself a goal. A statistical goal, more than 102 points, which was his total last year. Talk to me about players setting goals and statistical goals and what you think of them.
I think it's good. I think you always want to have something goal-wise, something so obviously, you have your process goals, you have your result-based goals, right? So he's got his result-based goals. He wants more than 102 points. That's great. The process is basically just going to have to be the same that he did last year. But it's nice to have that. And some players can kind of see that as pressure. For me, if I had a results-based goal, I always saw that as pressure. I'm like, okay, am I on pace for that yet? Am I going to achieve that yet? For me, it didn't really work that way. For me, it was more, what am I going to do on a day-to-day goal-wise that would help me? But some guys need that. I found throughout the course of my career that there were some guys where I'll give you an example, right? So guys will sign their entry level contract, and they get the standard signing bonus, and they go out and they spend it all on a new car. And I'm like, why are you spending all your money on a new car? Are you crazy? Like, no. I need to do that because now I need it in my head that I have to go out and earn more money, or else I will get So some guys just need that in their head where it's like, no, I have to do this, and that's what drives them, and that's what pushes them. Everyone's different. Everyone's wired a little bit different. But I saw guys, just enter the league, and they're like, yeah, I bought a place. I'm like, you bought a place? What are you, crazy? You're like, you emptied your bank account. But it's like, no, I need to have that. I need to have that hunger that I need to go get more of it. So, listen, Elias Pettersson, 102 points. It's in his wheelhouse, man. Like that guy being healthy is such a game changer for the Canucks. He's such a fun player to watch. He's so well-rounded, so complete. I don't see why if everything goes well for him again, I don't see why he's not in and around there, especially with the health factor.
Does he go the other way, though? Does he get 90 points and get closer to Patrice Bergeron? Does he work on that part of the game and be a lockdown forward as well?
Well, listen, if he's a 90-point guy and he's top 10 in the Selke, there's nothing wrong. It's unbelievable. And he's top 10 in the Selke is probably on the low side. Like he's that good away from the puck. I just think it's good to have those goals. But the process along the way is what obviously helps you achieve them. And even having I always found just having these shorter term things, you can break it down in a game, 5-minute segments in a game, 5-game segments in a season, month-long things. All those kind of little checkpoints help along the way. But I'm excited. I'm excited to see what he does this season. And I'm sure, He's an RFA. He's got ARB rights. There's a new contract on the horizon. You don't want to start thinking about all those things. You want to think about the things you do that help you achieve that ultimate goal. And but I don't know. Right from day one, when he arrived in the league, and I'm sure you guys saw this. There's just something about the guy. He's just got that moxie. He's got that charisma. The way he carries himself, the way he talks. It's very, very impressive. And he's built to be a guy that says, I want 102 points and I could probably go get it. There are a few guys like that, more than a few guys like that in the league, and he's up there.
We'll never forget that back check in his first NHL game, right, Blake?
Right.
Frank, Blake is really pushing Elias for the Selke here over the last couple of days.
I don't think I am.
I believe it is a distant early warning shot of the campaign that you will see in Vancouver this year to get Elias more love on the Selke Trophy voting, okay? Coach Tockett's coming in with the defensive system. We got to make sure all you guys in Toronto and in the Eastern time zone understand how good a defensive player Elias Pettersson.
It had been 5 years without a back check from anybody on the Vancouver Canucks lineup. So when Elias Pettersson came in and I saw one, it was notable.
We'll be watching for sure. Hey, listen, look what Mitch Marner in Toronto was able to do as a winger. For me, we had so many of these discussions at TSN over the season where it was is there going to be a winger that wins the Selke? And it would probably be Marner. And then the conversation went to, okay, once Bergeron retires, which he's now retired, who's the guy? Okay, it's going to be Kopitar, it's going to be Barkov. After that, it was okay, Marner's the winger that's really good defensively, but there's going to need to be a new school up-and-coming centerman who's in that conversation. I don't see why it wouldn't be Elias Pettersson. Sebastian Aho would be in there as well. He just signed, $9.75 million, Sebastian Aho. If Elias Pettersson is 100 points and he's top 5 in Selke voting, you do the math. How much money this guy's getting?
He has to go and bring it back to a Leaf now, doesn't he? Huh?
Well, he said first.
Yeah. Frank, marvelous stuff. Thank you for this. We'll catch up next Wednesday. Be well.
Thanks, guys.
This clip brought to you by LiUNA 1611, BC Laborers Union. Check out 1611.ca.